It is July 9th at 1:30, and I'm sitting with the interview for Peggy Hough. All right, Ms. Hough, if you can go ahead and tell me about Hayden. First, we can kind of go through Hayden and then to Craig. So if you wanted to start where you were born, that would be fine.
I was born in Hayden at Salat Memorial Hospital.
Okay.
It was like the only hospital in the area.
Okay.
There's lots of, many people from Craig and Hayden had all been born there.
Okay.
Jan, I think, was the first one that was born, one of the first babies born in Craig.
Oh, really?
It was a small community. My grandparents had came there after the war.
Okay.
And
what did they do? Were they homesteaders?
no, my people down the alley from us were homesteaders, and my grandpa, I think, hauled coal for a long time, and then later worked when I was growing up, he was the janitor at the school.
Okay. Okay.
And there's so many things I could tell, but
no problem. No problem. Well, start with you. What was it like growing up in Hayden? What was school like? Well,
I loved school. There was only like 17, 18 kids in our class. We had the same kids every year.
Okay.
We all
and
played
that's
together.
Just your class?
That was my class.
Okay.
And we played together. We did everything together. We could ride bikes all over town. There was never any fear of anything.
Right.
They did have sidewalks at the time, so you could roller skate on the sidewalk with
okay.
the little clip-on roller skates. And my grandma lived halfway between the school. I lived at the far end of Hayden, and my grandma lived halfway in between, and so I would always fall down somewhere riding my bike or by doing roller skates, and my grandma would always fix me, and then I'd get on the rest of the way home.
Okay.
It was just, they had hospital dances that benefited that they made money to donate to the hospital, and so it was always a really big thing when my mom and dad would get to go to that, because it was almost like an adult prom.
Right.
And us kids we could have special things, but goodies, and we got to be left at home.
Right.
There was always a big Yampa Valley Electric meeting that everybody went to, and people were all there, and there was a great big meal, and all of us kids got to go to a room and watch movies, and that was, of course, a big thing back then. The fair, I think, that makes me think of things that were going on.
Yeah.
The Routt County Fair was it was a great fair.
What was it like?
Up.
What would you do?
It was, all the animals. They had horse racing.
Oh,
and,
okay.
There was this lady by the name of Kay Conyers that always rode horses, and she won every year, but we always got excited by her. And my mother always worked in the canned section, and they just had a lot of stuff that people would bring in, but I think people had big gardens, and there was lots of more canning probably that goes on than now.
Right.
And my dad, then they'd always have a rodeo along with the fair, and when I got older, my dad worked for the city of Hayden, and Dad worked at the rodeo, and he was like in the booth and had to keep care of all the money and the people entries and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So fair time was really a very exciting time. We didn't have all the rides that they have today. We didn't have dance. I think there was always a fair dance, but that was for the big people, and we didn't get to go.
Right. But there were a lot of things to do.
Yes.
So.
It was always a wonderful time.
Okay.
And you got to run all over the fairgrounds, and you didn't have to worry back then because it was safe.
Right.
It was always a safe place.
Right.
That went on till about 6th grade, and in 6th grade, my dad quit working for the city of Hayden, and he came to Craig and started working down here for the city. And so then it was like, well, we're going to be moving.
Right.
And so for a couple of years they looked, and finally we moved to Craig. And so
And how was it coming to Craig?
Very hard.
Really?
Very hard. Well, I'd had 18 kids in my class.
Oh, okay.
And I'd gone to school with them every year, and like I said, we rode bikes and we played and we did almost everything together. It wasn't, it was really hard that first day of school.
Right.
I remember crying, and here I am, a 9th grader, and Dad said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "I just want to go with my friends." And I believe, I'm not positive, but I think there were like 116 kids in our class. But the lucky thing was we were the first people, we were the first class to go to school in what is now Sandrock Elementary.
Right.
And at that point they had 9th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. And 9th wasn't in with high school for the first time ever. Right. And so at least I wasn't going, everybody else was new to that school also. And because of sports, I'd been a cheerleader in 8th grade in Hayden, and so because of sports, I did know some kids. Girls didn't play sports then. They only had the cheerleading. But because of that, I kind of knew people back and forth, so it wasn't like I was totally scary, but...
I know I'm a military brat, so changing schools.
Understand.
No, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. So then we just came down here, and Dad went to work for the city. He worked for the water and sewer department. At that time, they were combined, and my mother worked at. She worked at a bakery downtown here, Fuss's Bakery, and I loved it. Because all the old donuts, especially the chocolate donuts, she got to bring home. So that was probably my first big downfall. And then by the time, probably a year later, they had built Valley View Manor Nursing Home, which is now Sandrock Nursing Home. Okay. And my mother went to work up there. I probably 6 months after she went to work, they needed a dishwasher, and so I went there after school and worked as a dishwasher.
And that was the 9th grade still?
It might be about the beginning of my sophomore year.
Okay.
Probably about 1966, I expect.
Okay.
And it was, that was fun, because I only had to work 3 hours. It was a really good job. Besides that, my mother was my boss. And there were wonderful ladies that were cooks, and they would fix always an after-school snack for me. Right. And you'd go in, get a table set, and you could work and get your dishes washed, and by 7 o'clock you could be done. And so there weren't very many school activities that were any later than 7 o'clock. You had your clothes with you if you were going to go to something, and you got to go. And John and Dana Filkowski at that point came in, and they were they ran the nursing home. She was the nurse, head nurse, and he was the administrator, and they worked there for 30 years probably. Okay. And it was nice. They were very nice people. Okay. At the time, before the big corporations came in and took over, they used to plant a big garden, and everyone would go out and kind of harvest the garden stuff, and my mother would they'd can stuff and freeze stuff, and a lot of the patients had fresh things, and Mom always made them homemade, lots and lots of homemade pies, and I would sometimes say, "Well, Mom, why aren't you going to donate to this, and aren't you going to donate to that?" And she said, "I have my charity, Peggy," and I'd say, "Well, what's that, Mom?" And she said, "I take care of an awful lot of old folks." And she did, looking back on it. Right. So from there, I loved high school. We had a great high school. What do you want to know about high school? Anything. What did you do after school? Did you continue to work? I worked there at the nursing home off and on, mainly all through high school, and off and on even after I was out 2 or 3 years. My mother was the boss sometimes. If she needed help and someone wasn't showing up, it was, "Peggy, get in here and get some dishes washed." Right. So, and later there was another gal in our community, Sherry Schaefer, that she worked, we kind of split the shift, and Sherry and I each learned to cook,
Okay.
So one of us would cook and one of us would wash dishes, and most of the time we would just share all the responsibilities. Sherry's brother is Ron Schaefer, that is an eye doctor.
Okay.
Here in town.
Okay. Outside of work, then, what would you do for extracurricular activities?
A lot of play.
A lot of play.
Like I said, we didn't have sports, but at the time there was a girls' drill team.
Oh.
So participated in the drill team, and back then they used to have an awful lot of pep rallies. So everybody would get together and make lots of posters, and but it was just something you did. Yeah, there was a lot of school spirit.
Okay.
And we had a lot of fun, and probably I got into trouble some too, but not into trouble. By today's standards, it wouldn't be anything, and I never got caught doing any of it. But probably there were things that I was doing that I shouldn't have been doing. But
a generally enjoyable.
Very good, yes. And there were lots of times there was a Midwest cafe, and it was really quite fun to come down. I believe Bert Zimmerman made pies, but I won't swear that it was always Bert. But at the time she was a waitress there, and she made wonderful peanut butter pies.
Oh.
And
where was this again?
It was about where the Galaxy is now.
Okay.
Right downtown.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'd go lots of times after games and stuff. There was a place called Easley's Cafe, and it's been torn down now, but it was down kind of where an insurance company is down in the middle of town, whatever. But anyway, we'd all go to Easley's, and everybody'd sit around and drink coffee or Cokes. And when I was younger, they had a bowling alley where Craig Ford is now. That was a big bowling alley.
Okay. And
I guess when I was probably a freshman and sophomore, that was a bowling alley. And so that was kind of where we went and things happened.
Okay.
And, we always had the movie theater. Theater was
same place?
Same place.
Okay.
It was a it was fun, Seems like there was always a room back behind that people could take their kids. You probably shouldn't put this on, but they could take their kids. But on Friday and Saturday nights, there were a lot of boys and girls in that room, and you'd always kind of try to sneak and see who was in the room. But I don't know. Let's see. What else did we do?
It seems like there's a lot for you to do, even as a teenager. You had access to a lot of activities.
Yes.
Okay.
When we were young in Hayden, we did an awful lot of, in the wintertime, there was East and West and Center Cog, and on West Cog, which we went down that hill the other day, it was a great place to go sledding. And we always had the sleds with the runners, and there would be two of us pile on, and you'd lay down, and there were bad curves, and it was a very steep hill. And one of the parents would sit at the bottom of the hill, and we would sled on that hill, and I'm talking a mile or two down that hill.
Yeah.
It was great. It was like there's never been sledding that's been as good as that since. And there were just we had school activities, we had plays. When I was a senior, we put on the play called The Sound of Music.
Okay.
And it was a big deal.
Right.
I mean, people from communities around came. We had 3 performances and a matinee.
Wow.
It was a really big deal. Today they have a hard time drawing enough people to even come, to fill an auditorium. But at the time, they didn't do those things very much. So that was a lot of our beginning of our senior year. I think we probably put 4 or 5 months in on that.
Wow.
And at the same time, this is in '67. Our football team, and you'll probably hear about that at different points. It was the last time that Moffat County went to the state playoffs.
Oh, I haven't heard anything about that yet.
Our football team won. We had a great team, and we had to travel every weekend. We never got home field advantage. So the first weekend, mass transit leaving Craig, we went to Olathe.
Okay.
And played in Olathe. The next week they won. The next weekend we had to go to Lamar, La Junta. I think we played La Junta, but that was clear down in the southeastern part of the state. And then we won that, and we got to play. And the next weekend it was to Julesburg, and that's clear over on the northeastern side. And literally they filled trailway buses with kids.
Wow.
You paid, I think you paid maybe, I don't know, $10 or $15, and they took whole buses, and behind us it was just a motorcade. Everybody traveled together. It was just
everyone supported
phenomenal.
the football team.
It was a very big thing.
And how far did you go in the playoffs?
Championship.
Went to the championship.
We didn't win.
Still went.
Yeah, we still went. They had a kid called Preacher Lacey that was a really, really good football player, and he just made us look like nothing. But we actually were honored at homecoming this year as honored alumni.
Okay.
And I had always tried to. I kept remembering this kid called Preacher Lacey, and I thought, this might just. Have I made up this name? But the guy said, yeah, Peggy, there really was somebody by that name, and we can't believe that you remembered it. But
Preacher Lacey.
Preacher Lacey. And it was so fun. And Pete Pleasant, he just said, you don't, I really have a lot of school spirit. And the Julesburg team had floats, and they were going around and parading around the track around the football team, and I wouldn't let them go in front of our bleachers.
Right.
I stopped. And I thought I was the only one that remembered that, but Pete came up and told me at this football game this year, he said, do you remember when you stopped him? Yes! And so we just did a lot of fun things. It was
a really tight-knit community. Wow.
Yeah. And so, to this day and age with our kids, so many kids hate school. So many kids just don't. And I have the hardest time with that because we had fun. We also had kids. We had an English class that one of the kids stood up and you had to give a talk about what you were going to do, and all this kid could say was, I can't wait till I get out of here. These have been the most miserable years of my life.
Right.
Really? But we were just talking about it out there. If you didn't go to school, then you didn't know what was going on.
Right.
So school was it was important to an awful lot of people, not just to me. We all it had a lot of values. But I think our parents instilled an awful lot of values. Mine definitely said, well, if you're going to skip school, then you just get your bags packed and get out of here. Because we pay taxes, and this is your only free education. So you better take advantage of it. And I wasn't going to cross my foot.
Of course not.
So as far as that, I'm trying to think about. A lot of my friends went sledding by the time they were in high school, out on Buck Peak, but I just never did. But there was a lot of kids who did go out on Buck Peak. And I don't know to this day really where Buck Peak is. So, but I heard about it. Somebody else might be able to tell you where Buck Peak is, but
it must be fairly local.
It must be, because kids went there and went sledding sometimes. But I'm really a fair weather person, and I never really liked that. But let's see, what else can I tell you?
Well, that's a great start. What did you do after high school?
Went to college in Greeley. I was going to be a teacher.
Okay.
And went for 2 years, and then got smart and smarter than I should have been, and wound up. I had 2 kids, and then got a divorce and realized that I needed to do something better with my life. And so looked into a lot of plans, and I had a friend that was a hairdresser, and she said, Peggy, you could support your kids real well with being a hairdresser, and so I went away to school. It was on a government program.
Beautician school? Okay.
And at the time when I applied, they weren't letting, there had been so many people in this program that had been failing and hadn't been following through. And I took their tests, and the lady drove from Grand Junction and said, you've been accepted into this program. And it was like an on-the-job training program, but they were going to maybe like teach me how to work at Safeway, or they would have taught me to be a secretary, or but she said, it's all waiting on your shoulders, and if you finish and you do a good job, then maybe other people are going to get the opportunity. So I kind of knew that I better do a good job. And so I did it and finished, and it was a wonderful job.
Okay.
It was a wonderful job.
So you liked it from the beginning?
I did.
Okay.
My mother used to say I'd worked at a bank, and I'd worked at a credit collection agency, and I waited tables. I always liked waiting tables. I decided that it was fun to communicate, talk back and forth.
Right.
When you're waiting tables, you can talk to your customers.
Right.
And so it wasn't very difficult for me to talk. And
I'm like that.
Yeah, it's just easy. You know, some people say, "Oh, how can you stand there and talk?" Well, it's just you just do it.
Everyone does.
Yeah. But at any rate, it was a good thing. And I came back and went to work. There was a beauty shop called the Style Beauty Shop. It had been here for, I guess, 30 years plus. Adele Chandler I think Adele Chandler had started the business, and she'd sold it, and another lady kind of took over, and sooner or later, this lady owned it that wasn't working, and three of us said, "Oh, we don't want to do this," and so we ended up leaving, and it was in the middle of the boom, and we ended up leaving. And
the boom in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yes, and it was a great time to build a clientele because you didn't have to wait for customers. They were lined up at the door needing haircuts and stuff. So,
a lot of men, a lot of single men.
No, not really.
No.
There was still that stigma, just a little bit.
Okay.
About a guy going to the beauty shop.
Okay.
Little bit on Saturdays. There were some with guys with long hair.
Okay.
But still, there was a barber in town, and my husband actually came to Colorado at that same time, and he said the barber closed at 5 and wasn't open on Saturdays, so sometimes your hair got really, really long before you made the connection with the barber. So I don't know if everybody found that, but still at that point there was still that stigma.
Right.
And man, it could have been just in Craig, Colorado too. So
sure not.
Probably not. But any rate, we ended up starting the business, and
so you started joint. Like
we did, well, it was called booth rental, and we each bought our own station, all of our own supplies, and we worked it as a business, but as a one person. You know, I took care of all my own stuff.
Right. And almost like a cooperative or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And worked out well.
Okay.
And I ended up then, about 12 years after we'd started, I ended up buying a building, and then I rented the building to the other people, and I still own the building, and maybe one of these days it will sell, but economy's not so great right now.
Right.
So, but it still is a beauty shop, but not under my name anymore.
Okay.
They run it, and they rent the space now from me, and it works great.
Right. Well, what you said, it's a great time to open up the business because of the boom. How did that progress, and how did that change after the boom? When things kind of slowed down, how did it change?
Well, Craig never totally went back to where it was before.
Okay.
It was more of a smaller town, it seemed like, atmosphere before the boom, and after that, lots of people came in and stayed, and by then we did have the power plant, and we had Colorado coal had grown bigger, and I think we had Empire Energy that had grown bigger, and it had been a coal mine, but it was a smaller coal mine, and by then it employed a lot more people. So we just had an awful lot more stuff here. So it just seemed like it didn't ever regress back to the little quiet town. Although at the time, there were traffic jams in Craig.
Really?
Yes. People coming in from the power plant area, coming on Ranny and down Main Street. You waited. You didn't just get down through town in 5 minutes. You waited in line.
Traffic jams.
Maybe 2 or 3 stoplights before everybody got through.
Right.
It was bumper to bumper traffic at closing time. Hard to believe.
That makes sense, though.
It was during that time that they changed Main Street from being two-way
to the one-way.
So Victory Way became you went west, and 4th Street you went the other way. And it was always kind of sad to me because when you said what were some of the activities that we did in high school, we drug Main.
Oh, okay.
It was a fun thing.
And that
Crisscross,
changed.
and that changed. I felt sorry for the kids because by the 70s, you didn't get to drag Main anymore.
Okay.
If you did, you weren't going to pass people in the on the street. And,
right.
And there were people who were married and had kids, and they were still used to the people driving Main. And I remember they'd sit down on different corners and wave at you when they went by, and different guys, if they got tired of driving, they'd just pull over. And of course, the carload of girls that wave going by just like always. And there used to be mediums in the middle of the road.
Oh, okay.
And where the whatever you call it, grill and steak or house, and there used to be a little gas station there, and he rented motorcycles, little motor scooters. If you were 14, you could rent a motor scooter. And so a lot of my friends would go rent those motor scooters and run all over. And then we all got to the point where everybody was able to drive. And those mediums people, we'd have a water balloon fight. And until one of the girls ran into one of the poles on the medium, and there were no more water balloon fights. But it was kind of a lot of people took part in those water balloon fights.
Right.
But it was a summertime thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember, even though the swimming pool was there, I don't really remember us going. I didn't go swimming. I don't know that really too many of the friends went swimming too much. But, we were probably all too cool to be seen in our swimming suits anymore.
But people did do it.
When we were growing up in Hayden, I think it was the same thing here. They had, all the summer lessons. And when we were growing up in Hayden, they had a bus that they took us to Steamboat. And for 2 weeks we went to swim lessons in Steamboat.
Wow. Every day?
For 2 weeks, yeah.
Oh, for 2 weeks straight you're there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was really a pretty cool thing because, you got to go and you got to pack a lunch, and we would always meet at the was a little liquor store on the corner there in Hayden, and that lady must have been instrumental in getting the swim lessons going, because we'd always have to go in and sign our name that we were there, and we'd always get a can of pop.
Oh, okay.
Because you didn't get pop, wasn't something that was ever in our house.
Right.
It was only for special times.
Right.
It was so that we didn't maybe get a can of pop the whole 2 weeks, but there were some days that you got to have pop and your lunch.
And that was a big
deal.
Right.
That 2 weeks of going to lessons was a big deal.
Okay.
So, and then down here by then they had a swimming pool down here by then at that time. So, and I suppose because we were in Routt County, that's why we went to the swimming pool in Steamboat.
Yeah. I'm getting that small town sense from everything you're saying. It's really good.
So it was nice.
I've talked to a few people, and they said that when the boom started, the latest one in the 70s and 80s, that with all the people coming in, Craig got kind of rowdy. There were a lot of people in bars and a lot of fights.
I expect there probably were.
You didn't see that? Or did you see that?
Well, by then I was 21 to 23, I think I was 23 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And you heard about it. You know, I was probably in the bars some at that point, but you heard about things,
right,
you know, going on.
Right.
I was always kind of oblivious to it. I don't know, but I heard, you heard it.
Right.
And yeah, there was some rowdiness, things that hadn't gone on in our community. It had just been a nice, quiet community, and there were a lot of, probably it was that. I remember it was kind of a lot of people that came in were union workers.
Right.
That there was between the laborers and the iron workers, and our community hadn't had unions.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was a union worker.
Okay.
And so after we got married, he was laid off. And he was laid off when we got married.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of my customers saying every week, "Has he got a job yet?" And I'd say, "No,
Mm-hmm.
he hasn't got a job yet." And one lady owned a furniture store, and she said, "Well, he can come and go to work for us." Well, at that time he would have worked for $3.50 an hour, but on unemployment from the union, he made $5 an hour.
Wow.
And he kept saying, "I'm not going to go to work for $3.50, Peggy." And so finally one day this lady said, "What kind of a man did you marry?" I said, I don't know. And she said, "Well, I think it's time he finds a job." I went home and I said, "Before she comes next Wednesday at 1 o'clock, you will have a job." He said he went and got one of the hardest jobs he carried hod for a bricklayer. And
wow.
He said he made $5 an hour, and he said, "I worked harder than I've done on most jobs."
Mm-hmm.
But that mentality of, we didn't understand it. My mom and dad didn't understand it. We hadn't been around unions. There had been a coal mining union here, the United Mine Workers, but it hadn't been that big of a union. So with that change came probably kind of a union mentality that you worked your job, and if there wasn't work for that, then you didn't work.
Okay. Was there an anti-union sentiment then here? Would you say it?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't, there wasn't ugliness about it. I just think
it was different.
It was just people, and you'd hear it in the beauty shop. It was people who just didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you probably got the same thing said then that people say now. There are a lot of people who are very much against unions.
Mm-hmm.
Marrying a union man, he would talk about what the unions had done for people.
Right.
And yes, they did a lot of good things. They served their purpose, but sometimes it went over. So, but yeah, there was change in our community. It wasn't a sleepy little community. There was an area that I can't think what the two streets are called right now. But at any rate, it was kind of what it was more exclusive. If you lived up there, your parents, the people who lived there were much more well off than others.
Okay.
And, then by the time that all the influx came, those houses became mediocre, and the big houses for Craig came in, and so I think I would call it the social system changed.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that, Jan?
What's that?
Wouldn't you say the social system in Craig changed after the boom?
Oh, very much.
How else did it change aside from these socioeconomic status notice with the different communities being developed? How else did it change? You talked about, for instance, the road becoming one way, and so those water balloons stopped. Did community involvement start to go down for teenagers, for business owners, for anyone? Did you see opportunities start to shrink?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I so much of the time, still the same people who worked hard to make an organization work, those people are still working in those organizations today.
Okay.
But along came new people and gave them new blood and new excitement.
Right.
So I don't think it ruined things. I don't wish for the nostalgia of yesterday. We had a lot of fun in that time, but the change was good. I can't say that it was bad.
Okay.
As far as it brought new businesses in, some of the old businesses. When I grew up in high school, you didn't have to leave town to go buy any clothes. You could get just about everything you needed right here.
Right.
And we had nice dress shops and men's stores, and I think probably with Kmart moving in, people will sometimes today say, well, Walmart comes in and everything gets closed down. Well, I think Kmart probably came in and changed a lot.
Was Kmart first?
Kmart was first.
Okay.
And so a lot of things kind of changed
Right.
with that. I think some of our small businesses started, our dress shops disappeared.
Right.
Because we had 2 different dress shops and a men's store, and 3 different dress shops, and shoe store, and the penny store. That we had some nice stores. People came here as a shopping thing.
Right.
Because the downtown area was very nice.
Okay.
So
How did those big businesses coming in affect your business?
it didn't affect mine.
It didn't.
Because in the beauty business it was it just kind of meandered along, and you just kept your business going, and as long as you're doing a good job and providing the services in the beauty business, it can keep going. I think the other businesses had to probably become much more innovative to keep up with stuff. And then you watch, so many of the small mother and pop kind of stores close down.
Right.
But I think that was happening not only here, but kind of across the country too.
Yeah. Are there still any mom and pop businesses around that were around when you were younger, when you were here? Have they all kind of gone on, out of business, or moved on?
I don't think anything's here. We had 2 drugstores downtown. The Golden Cabby restaurant was there for a long time, and it had changed hands a lot, but that was probably the only local bar that was here then and was left, and now it's closed down this last year. Insurance companies are here, but no, I don't think there's any of the little stores left. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how would you say Craig has been continuing to develop, through the late 80s, the 90s, the 2000s? What have you seen in Craig?
I think they've been working hard with the economic development stuff. I think we've seen some stuff come in. The college has been a plus. The coal mines certainly built and got bigger, and the power plant. I think it increased, people. It's very frightening to think that if this whole coal thing goes through, that our coal mines could be shut down. And
the new.
Yeah, and I'm you have to wonder, surely they're not going to do that to put that many people out of work, but I don't know. And
you mean federal policies against
I think
for clean energy?
We've got a state law right now that's been voted, I think, to get rid of for clean energy. And that's very frightening for our community, because I think if we didn't have our coal mines, we could possibly see Craig right back to where it was in the 60s.
Right, very smaller.
Yeah.
Significantly.
I mean, I don't know what people would do here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always been a great area for ranchers, and you know, we've always had our western heritage somewhat, and that's always been a plus for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's been a good place to live.
Right.
Great place to raise kids.
How have you seen the people of Craig change? Maybe from clients coming into your shop, or in any capacity, really.
Well, you know, everything stayed so many things stayed the same in that sense. You know, I started with the mother, and then I did the kids, and then I did the grandkids, and then I did the great-grandkids. Mm-hmm. And other than over the years seeing, you know, different bosses from different places, you know, there was a transition with bosses in different, you know, the mines and the power plant and stuff. They came and went, but they'd come and go. Mm-hmm. As far as the likes and dislikes of most of those people, I think I don't know that there was a significant change in them. As far as, you know, I don't know if this is significant, but so many people would say, you know, there's nothing to shop at now, so we have to go out of town. There was that we had once, but now people you know, have to leave and go to places and do stuff. But
right.
But as far as the people changing, I don't know that I've seen that much of a change.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. If there's not a change, you can't see one.
Maybe I'm just I really am a total optimist.
No, that's
and so I really do work hard on most times seeing all the good things.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen an influx of people coming up from Mexico, and that has changed some stuff. You know, we always had some, I guess, Hispanic families, but they'd lived here. I grew up with a lot of families in Hayden, but then with the influx of everybody there, we had a lot more Spanish people in Craig than we ever used to. And they provided a workforce for people. You know, at times we're a bedroom community for Steamboat, that people drive back and forth and work there and provide a lot for them.
Right. Okay. So that's changed. How would you say recreation, after-school activities, all that type of stuff has changed between when you were young and your kids growing up here?
Well, the kids have games now.
Uh-huh.
They have televisions. They don't have, you know, even by the time when my kids came along, we were excited to go to a movie. Mm-hmm. And you didn't get to go to the movie every week.
Right.
You got to choose your movie. By the time I had high school kids, when they got in high school, my husband got rid of a snowmobile so we could afford a used VCR. Mm-hmm. It was like $200 or $300 to buy that used VCR.
Right.
And because you couldn't afford a brand new one. Mm-hmm. And but it was a thing that everybody in the family could use. So by then they had the VCR. By the time, you know, the grandkids that came along, these kids have anything they want on TV, and then they've got all the technology. I feel sorry for our teachers that are trying so hard to teach these children, and they can't compare to all this flash bam.
I'm a high school teacher.
So. Oh, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
It's just
integrating technology is
yes.
interesting.
And so yes, there's a big change.
Mhm.
You still see kids going to the movie, but, you know, they can all download it and they can do a lot of stuff too.
Mhm.
And so there's a big change
Right.
from then to now. I do think, you know, we've got Elkhead Dam.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people that go out there and use.
Where is that at?
Out Elkhead Dam.
Mhm.
It's east of Craig.
Okay.
6 or 7 miles.
Okay.
We didn't have that facility, so there are people who have boats, and they have a day use area, and I do think there's an awful lot of people and kids that go out there and play it. You know, there's a lot of water play.
Okay.
And we still live in a wonderful area for hunting. There are still, you know, young or old, the hunting has been instilled in an awful lot of kids and, you know, people, and they're here because of, it's an area where they can go and if they want to, just go shoot.
Right.
You know, we're isolated enough yet that we can do that.
Right.
So there's still all those, you know, hunting related outdoor sports activities that way, and four-wheeler things that, you know, granted we used to have the little scooters that you could rent right up and down the road. Now people have, so as far as activities, recreational, there's an awful lot of that got big four-wheeling groups and that kind of stuff here now.
Okay.
So.
Okay, that's one I haven't heard before. That's a
And
good
they
one.
also have a, it's a Jeep rock climbing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had, I can't think what they had thing in the parade the other day, but we have friends that spend lots and lots of money on Jeeps. And one guy's got his thing on my Facebook, and boulders this big.
Yeah.
And they want to take the Jeep up, and you know, and when he got through, he said, "Oh, I lost the U-joint."
The rock crawlers?
Yeah, the rock crawlers.
Yeah.
And really? And you have the money to put in a new U-joint just because you want to go over that rock? But yeah. And so there is a big group of that now in Craig.
Okay.
So
so almost more extreme sports, if you will?
I'd call that an extreme sport, but as far as the four-wheelers and dirt bikes and stuff, I probably wouldn't term those extreme sports, but there's a big contingent of people, they say, that go out to sand wash. There's an area out there that it's just loaded with people every weekend that go out and ride. So, yeah, there are probably, you know, when you get talking about, there's lots, and in the meantime, you know, there's been lots of people, they've developed Black Mountain and wilderness area, and people have built lots of cabins up in there, and so between that and snowmobiling, there's a big snowmobile club here, and they do an awful lot of things for that. They've got they've got 2 or 3 different motorcycle activities that I know one restaurant does it. They do a poker run, but I can't think of what the other things are for. But it brings all the guys' motorcycles all together. So well, I think there are probably more things overall in general for lots of people. It's just not just for a few.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of them still do incorporate the outdoors. It's
right.
not, everyone's not shut in all the time.
Right.
Okay.
We do, and you know, we are a lovely area because we can still go a lot of places.
Right.
In our area that you're not going to run into anybody.
Right.
My husband's family is from Michigan, and they came out once, and we took them for a ride, and they didn't pass anybody all day long. And she said, "Oh, aren't you afraid?" And I said, "Why?" And she said, "There's nobody around to help you." And I said, "I'd probably be more afraid sometimes if I did run into somebody." So, yeah, it was. So it's just sometimes nice.
Right.
If you don't want to see lots of people, it's still a great place to be. So you can find lots of people, and then you can, and you know, and we still have lots of activities that we have in Craig that that they're working to build, and you know, one of these days our Whittle the Wood will maybe be a really big thing one of these days. It used to be a little thing. Every year it gets bigger.
Really?
So.
I saw a piece being transported yesterday.
Yeah. oftentimes wonder where are they going, and do
Yeah.
people buy them personally, or are they just taking them and setting them someplace? But
yeah.
I think they're pretty exciting.
Are there competitions now? I thought I'd heard something about a
The
competition.
competition.
Okay.
And I want to say they had 10 or 11 people, I think, this year.
Wow.
And
So it really is growing.
yeah, and I think the first couple of years, there were like 3 or 4, and every year. And so this year it was, and they kind of get bigger things each year. I was really surprised, and I thought it was a good turnout this summer. We went
Right.
down. It was very nice.
Okay. Do you know that piece in the museum? That's where that came from?
What's in there?
It's a large piece of Native American
Yeah, I think so.
skull, yeah.
Yeah.
I just
think so.
assumed. Okay.
Some people buy. There's a down on 4th Street. There's 7th Street maybe. There's a lady that has a bear in her, kind of sits beside her garage, and she decorates. Her name's Elaine Dupree, and they decorate the bear for the 4th of July, for Valentine's, for he has clothes for all the different things. His graduation, he has a hat and a robe, and she's sick right now, so I haven't seen it have quite as much. But it was kind of like the community bear that they always put it out there. Her husband was just a very neat man. I think he'd been born here. Worked for Greeley Gas for years, and Lloyd Dupree was his name, and played saxophone in a band. And at different dances, he and his group would get together, and he'd play the sax. And Lloyd worked hard at lots of things in our community. Later went on to sell real estate.
Okay.
And
Is he still around?
passed away.
Oh, he's passed away.
And this is his wife, Elaine.
His wife, Elaine.
Yeah.
And she is still...
She's still alive.
All right. Interesting.
And she grew up. She was born and raised here, and so and for years you could see Elaine and Lloyd walking. They'd get up every morning and go for a walk. They had their bag, and they picked up cans all over town.
Right.
He worked in the Rotary and the Lions Club, and I'm not sure the Rotary, probably the Lions Club. And she played the church organ at the Congregational Church, and they've just been wonderful people for our community. So anyways, they're there.
Okay.
They got the bear, and I don't know whether somebody put the bear there or they bought the bear. I've never remembered to ask her.
That's
so,
interesting, though.
At any rate,
thank you.
Anything else?
Is there anything else you'd like to add, just in general, or any stories?
I could probably tell you stories all day long, but as we were sitting out there on the thing talking, there's stories about people. I have one lady who talks about she came here in 1932, and I did her hair for years, and she worked as a waitress at a restaurant, kind of in Orcaeus Creations, I think, or Carol's New York Life building, somewhere right in there with this restaurant, and she talked about it being how awful it was, because as she was waiting tables, a black porter from the railroad came in to eat, and she said my boss looked through the window. He was in the kitchen cooking, and he said, "Tell him to leave. We don't serve black people here."
Wow.
So that was, in the 30s. It happened in Craig, Colorado too.
Yeah.
And that made a real impression upon me. But it bugged me. I thought, even in Craig.
Yeah.
But
so do you not see a lot of that anymore then?
I don't.
Or
think so.
through the years, I mean.
I don't think we did.
Okay.
When I grew up in Hayden, there was a lady, Vera, and I don't know what Vera's last name was. Vera worked as a nurse at the hospital. My mom worked at the hospital in Hayden, and Vera was a nurse there, and she was a black lady. and there was a man that lived behind us, and his name was Mr. Foster. And except for that, I didn't know any other black people.
Mm.
And then when we came to Craig, there was one family here, and that was all. And shortly after high school, we were in fact talking about the other day, after high school, we don't know where they went. But there's just like, where did they go? Now we have some black families that live here. But it just seemed like it was pretty much, for a long time, an all-white community, but I don't think it was because anybody was ugly.
Okay.
I don't think it was.
It's just how it was.
I guess it was just, maybe there wasn't any reason to come and work here. I don't know.
Okay.
But if there was underlying issues here about that, I've never heard. So, but it was, she talked about things in the 30s, and there was a lovely, lovely lady by the name of Lottie Skidmore. She came here when she was 12 years old, and she died, I think, when she was 93. And so, I want to say she came in the early 1900s, and they had a ranch way out on Breeze Basin. And she said when we came here, in a horse and wagon, she said us kids had to walk. And it was such ugly weather at the time that when we raised our feet, we had a foot of mud on the bottom of each of our feet. Now, I don't know that there'd be any children today that would walk and just keep walking because you weren't home yet. You weren't to the ranch.
Right.
And probably there wasn't a house built there when they got there. But she just, she said things were hard, but we survived. And so I think as with anything, you just do what you need to do.
Right. Right.
So she would have been a wonderful person to tell you stories.
Right.
There would have been a lady full of stories.
Well, I appreciate you passing those couple on.
I had 3 ladies that came in on Thursday mornings that had been long-term people here. And I loved listening to their stories.
Right.
They talked about the different doctors and sometimes the parties. And one lady had kind of been socially more elite. And the other lady that was sitting with us that day was a Mormon lady and much more quiet. And but they all gotten to be friends over the years on Thursday mornings. But I remember her saying, the Mormon lady said, I don't think the guy's name was Dr. Dill, but it was the doctor, and he said, she said, I worked for him. This woman was telling about going to parties there and dinner parties and the nights that they'd have. And, she said, they were fancy parties. And this other lady spoke up and she said, I know, I worked for him. And this lady goes, she throws her hands up in there, and I later said to the lady who had been working there, I said, do you have some stories to tell? She said, yes. I have some stories, but I'll leave them alone.
Oh, okay.
But she never ever told me, but I assumed that they'd probably been a lot of probably pretty risque parties maybe, but she was such a good, kind woman. She just said, she would die if she knew some of the things I remember. But it was always very, very fun.
Right.
Yeah. I listened to lots of stories, and I asked, just because sometimes it was wonderful for him to tell the stories, but for me to sit here and tell you, then I have to say, I don't remember this.
No, that's no problem at all.
But I don't know if I helped at all.
No,
but,
you did very much. Thank you.
Hopefully, there you have it.